right. Welcome everyone to Paraton's Mission Transition Podcast. I am your host today, Brian Acton. And this is session number 3 of our 6-part series. Today we're talking about decoding job descriptions. So this is part of our 6-part series. So every we do one of these a month where we talk about different parts of the job and candidate searching process, and parts of your job search and how to make folks a little bit more successful at that. So I'm joined today with members of our Paraton Military and Veterans Program team, to include myself. And since I'm already talking, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Brian Acton. Like I mentioned, I'm part of Paraton's Military and Veterans Talent Operations team. I've been in talent acquisition over 25 years, or 24 years now, which includes experience in Department of War space, the federal government side, contract and corporate sectors. I've done it as a technical recruiter, full desk recruiter, sourcer, headhunter, and now I do what I do here. I'm also a veteran of the Marine Corps and the Army as well. And I've been with Paraton for 5 years now. And then we'll go ahead and jump right in. And we'll let Brent introduce himself next today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Brian. My name is Brent Buffington. Been with Paraton for almost 4 years now, coming up. I started out as talent acquisition, and I've been on the military transition team for about a year and 10 months now. So it's been absolutely amazing. Love helping vets, love doing the events, meeting new people. And prior to that, I was human intelligence with the military for 20 years, retired. Right before I retired, I was actually a recruiter, which definitely gave me the footwork and the basis for all the awesome things we've been doing here. So that's about all I got. Jeff, over to you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Brent. Again, my name is Jeff Carson. I have been at Paraton now for about 8 years. I'm also a retired Army veteran. Been in talent acquisition for 16 years. Kind of got my feet wet in recruiting as an Army recruiter while on active duty. My specialty supporting Paraton is in transition outreach, creating new partnerships, and identifying and attracting talent across numerous different industries. Glad to be here today. Ready to go.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Jeff. And folks, this is your Paraton Military and Veterans Talent Operations team here. So if you're looking to get connected with roles here at Paraton, I highly suggest connecting with one of us three, and we can certainly be of assistance. So jumping right into what we're going to do today. So today we're talking about decoding job descriptions. So we're going to start off. We're going to talk about why decoding job descriptions is important to you as a candidate and a job seeker. Then we're going to break down those job descriptions and talk about the sections within a job description, what's important to you, what to take away from it, and what should be in your resume. Then we're going to highlight and understand the key responsibilities and aligning those with your resume. Then we're going to focus on the required qualifications that are listed in resumes and how to handle those when you're looking at your resume and self-assessing yourself. Then we're going to address the preferred qualifications, addressing those simply as they are because they are preferred qualifications. Then we're talking about tailoring your resume a little bit, using the job description to align your experience, and also using it to prep for the interview, how you can utilize the job description to prep for the interview. So these are actually other podcasts that we have as well. So the interview, Mastering Your Interview, is the final one in the series, which is session 6, which isn't until June though. So we'll go ahead and dive right into today's information delivery here. So I'm talking about decoding job descriptions. So really, why is it important to decode a job description? As a candidate, as a job seeker, you're obviously out there reading a lot of job descriptions. And even if you're looking for the same roles, you're still in the same field. Say you're a cybersecurity professional, logistics specialist, whatever. You're looking for roles that are related to your skill set, right? But every company, every organization tends to write these things just a little bit different. But typically within it, you're going to find some core pieces that you can take away from just about everything, right? So what does understanding the job description first do for you? It helps clarify the role expectations, understanding the specific tasks, responsibilities, and helps ensure alignment with your skills and experience, right? So that's why once you can master, understand, and reading those, you can get a lot of clarification on the role. It also helps you identify key skills and qualifications within the role and what the employer is looking for from you, right? So that's what we try to deliver today is what are we as employers looking at to you in your resumes and what you're applying and how are we qualifying you as well. So it allows you to highlight those relevant strengths and tailor your resume to match the employer's needs, which is us, right? We're also going to prepare you for interview questions using that job description, right? So knowing the job requirements help you anticipate and prepare for potential interview questions. And that's where you can use some of your preparatory skills with the STAR method, which we also do talk about later in the podcast. And doing all this ultimately will help boost your application success, right? So when we talk about tailoring your application materials based on the job search description, including increases your chances of standing out to recruiters, right? So when we talk about tailoring resumes, though, like we've all been job seekers, the three of us have looked for work before in our past, right? So we understand that tailoring a resume has got to be one of the most absolute worst things you have to do on a regular basis, right? So, nobody wants to jump in there, continue to change your resume for every job that you apply to. So that's what we're going to talk about, creating that core functional resume, right? Where changes that you have to make to your resume as you're applying to roles within your genre where should be minimal at best, right? So going from there. So that's why it's really important to decode a job description, because these 4 pieces right here are what are going to make you a desirable candidate to a recruiter and a hiring manager, and ultimately the company if you get hired, right? So, that's kind of really the breakdown right there. Jeff or Brent, any insights you guys would like to throw on why you guys think decoding job descriptions is so important to a candidate?
Well, one of the things, Brian, as you went down the list, I think it's good to actually have this as a checklist. So many times when we see a position out there and we decide that we want to apply for it, sometimes we really don't go down and do these things as far as decoding it. We just say, okay, I think I like this position. I want to apply for it. And we just simply apply rather than have some checkpoints, some things I should probably check off to make sure I'm not wasting my time. So I think you just, highlighting these key things is good to have a checklist to make sure that you're doing all these things, because and it's a good habit to be in. Whether you are, say if you did all these things and you didn't get selected or you didn't get a call, it's still a good habit to be in. You're creating good habits to where you're not wasting your time applying for positions. So I always tell people, they say, well, I did what you told me. Well, that's okay. It doesn't, someone else may have been selected that was more qualified, someone that it may have been an internal hire. It doesn't mean that you weren't qualified, but these are good habits to be in. And like you said, Brian, it'll increase your chances when someone open your resume. It's a good match because you literally checked all the blocks, and this is a good little checklist as a good habit to be in.
And, for me, it really is because it kind of really comes down to doing that honest self-assessment for me,
Yes.
And it's hard to do, and I think especially for some of us military folks too, when you look at it, we read a job description and we're like, well, if I can do this job, or I feel like I'm a fit for it. I don't necessarily have this or that, but I could do that. And really being able to do that honest self-assessment, though, when you start looking at, the job description as in totality and determining, well, if this is a requirement and I don't have it and I'm only meeting 70% of 100% of what they're looking for, am I really qualified for that role then? Is my resume going to speak to that? So it's kind of understanding that for myself, though, at the same time, really being able to conduct that honest self-assessment, because the last thing you want to do as a candidate or a job seeker out here is waste your time applying to, 300-400 jobs and never hearing a call back, because for me, I've always found that kind of be a red flag. If you feel like your resume is knocking it out the park and you apply to, 50, 75 roles and nobody's contacted you once, to me, that's kind of a red flag that maybe your resume is not speaking to us the way you think it does, though, to the talent acquisition folks the way you think it does. So being able to really conduct a functional self-assessment on, does your resume speak the language that you think it does? And does it align you to the roles you think you're applying to in that sense?
And Brian, just to add to as we go to the next slide, and that's not to say you have to be 100% meet every single thing on that job description. That's not what we're saying as well. So because I don't want people to get gun shy and say, well,
sure.
There's one thing I didn't have, so they told me don't apply. No, we're going to go through and we're going to say there are some things that are non-negotiables. And I'll leave it at that, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go ahead and jump on to, breaking down the job description as it is, right? So a lot of times, obviously you're going to have the job title. So when you're looking at job titles and you're job searching though too, realize every organization might call we'll just use ourselves as an example. We're part of talent acquisition, even though we aren't traditional recruiters in that sense in what we do here. We still are part of talent acquisition in that sense. So if I was looking for a job today myself and, I was looking for a job in talent acquisition, it could have 15 different titles though, depending on the organization. So understanding that though too, when you start looking at a title and you're applying to a role, does your titles of your previous roles align with that work segment at the same time? Whether I was going to call myself a talent acquisition business partner, talent acquisition professional, or recruiter, or technical recruiter, or full desk recruiter, those type of things. So just making sure that, when you're looking at the job titles, do your job titles align with what they're looking for, right? Especially when we start talking about transitioning military folks, right? So if you say on your resume, we're looking for a cybersecurity professional, and on your resume it says, commander of such and such battalion, that's not a job title to us, though, that we can functionally qualify you for in that sense. So keeping that kind of stuff in mind at the same time. But a lot of job descriptions then will provide that overview, right? I know Peraton here, we're really good at that. So we'll have a little bit of overview of the role, possibly who the customer it is supporting. Not everyone will have that because sometimes we can't disclose that, right? But however, it may have the customer supporting a brief roles and responsibilities, kind of what the role is doing on a daily basis and what the function of the role is. But then it's going to break down, those responsibilities. It's going to list those key tasks and duties. So this is where you really want to use this section to match your experiences to the day-to-day requirements of that job. That's what's listed in that job description. So you should start seeing those things in your resume as well, right? Because that's how you're going to get reviewed in that sense. Required qualifications. This is the section that is everything to you as a candidate searching for a role, right? So within those, they're going to list the essential skills they're looking for, the educational requirements, certifications needed. Ensure you meet those criteria to be considered a strong candidate. So as an example, one we run into a lot when we start talking about the education piece, right, where it might say bachelor's degree and 8 years of experience, but you've been doing it for 6 years, you're kind of close, you don't necessarily have 8, you're 2 years short of 8. Are you qualified for that role? Chances are probably not here, but it kind of depends on the organization as well. So you always have to be in mind when you're looking at the required qualifications, the type of companies you're applying to. So if this was more of a commercial company, we might have some play in that, but we still like you as a candidate. We're really looking for 8, but we can probably do you at 6 if you've got this kind of experience and it aligns well with the work we're doing. However, some companies like us here at Peraton, we are a government contract company. So when you start looking at those education levels and stuff like that, and some of these required qualifications, if you will, that those are part of our statements of work. So the government, our customers, require you to have that minimum years of experience. So when we list the minimum years of 8 years of experience or something like that, that's a pretty strong minimum. Now, should you be like 6 months shy of having 8 years, it could possibly happen, but you always got to remember that's a minimum. So you're going to be competing against candidates who then might possibly have 10, 11, 12 years experience in that sense at the same time. And certifications. Now, certifications can kind of be a big one when you start talking about, qualifying yourself and decoding this job description, right? So say it requires a CISP certification or Network Plus certification, Scrum Master or what have you, and you're in the process of obtaining it, and you're going to have it in the very near future, but you don't have it yet. If you have it listed on your resume, say, Scrum Master in, June of 2026, so it's imminent, I would still apply for that role though at that same time if it's just a certification piece, right? As long as you've got it listed on your resume that you will have it in pocket here very shortly, because they'll probably make it a contingent part of your offer anyway then. But there's kind of that rule of thumb, and as Jeff kind of mentioned earlier, 70, you don't have to meet 100% of the qualifications, but if you're starting to break down to like 70% of it, that could be, you got to remember the competition you're competing against as well. So really understanding those required qualifications, clearance levels, those type of things, making sure you have the requisite clearance levels listed in these things, right? And then we talk about preferred qualifications. So, this is where it can get a little tricky for some folks when you're doing, your self-assessment here, because a preferred qualification is something that isn't required to hire you, though. But a required qualification is typically something that's required to hire you. So even if you have 2 or 3 of the preferred qualifications, but you're missing 2 or 3 of the required qualifications, it could still be a deal breaker in being able to hire you at the same time. But also is going to be dependent on the type of organization you're applying to, commercial versus private, those type of things. So, keeping those kind of things in mind when you're breaking down these job descriptions. But this is kind of the four parts of a job description. Job title, overview, responsibilities, required qualifications, and preferred qualifications. Depending on the organization, they might add a little bit of something else in there in pieces. But this is pretty much what you're looking for in a job description. The responsibilities and required qualifications are a really big one for you when you are breaking these down and understanding yourself as someone qualified for this role, right? So, Jeff, Brent, anything you guys like to add in on like what's important in these particular 4 sections?
Well, Brian, I think you covered all of them, but also a point that you made.
We got some feedback.
Brent,
What's that?
We get
what's your
some
feedback?
One thing that I would say on this one is, are you saying what's in the chat, or are you asking about what's on the slide?
No.
We had some feedback. Okay. Never mind. Now we had some noise. We had some noise. So
yeah.
But what I was saying, Brian, was that one of the things that you mentioned about being a DoD contractor, certain stipulations that we must abide by according to the contract. But here's another broad, because we don't want you to think that, because you're going to be applying. Many of you may be applying for different roles at different types of organizations, such as we're a DoD contractor. There's the commercial sector. There's universities. There's nonprofits. So as Brian mentioned, if the position may require 8 years of experience, and say you have 5 or 6 for a commercial university nonprofit, you may be considered, because they may be. You may have the majority of those qualifications, and you may fall short in some of those areas, or the people that the requirements for that particular position may be for those types of people, the price point may be really, really high. And so the salary that's paying for that position may be low. So then they typically will start, considering lower level candidates with less qualifications, because they may be struggling to fill positions at that price point that they're looking for. So we want you to broaden your horizon and not look at it as one size fits all. We're a contractor, we're a little different, but certain organizations, they're a little bit different. So just keep that in mind as you're applying, and don't be gun shy and say, well, they told me, if I don't have this, don't apply. Just look at the industry, look at the type of organization that you're applying for as well.
One thing I want to add real quick is you always have your required skills that are kind of the non-negotiable. Then it says your preferred qualifications. You'll also a lot of the times see desired qualifications as well. And those are the additional ones that aren't anywhere within that job description, but they're always those ace in the holes, the additional certs that those hiring managers are looking for, that are like, okay, this guy might only have, like Brian said, 8 years of experience, but we need 9 years or 10 years. The guy doesn't have the 10 years of experience, but he has the 5 desired skills that aren't required. They're not preferred, but they're just those additional ace in the hole skills or certs. Definitely add those in there. Always have them in there. Always add dates. If you're still doing your ongoing education, you're doing your additional certs, always add those additional certs. Hiring managers love seeing those. And like Brian said, they will a lot of times make that contingent upon those hires or those offer letters. But when they see that, hey, this guy is actually still doing continuing education, he's not wanting to be stagnant, he's stacking up those certs. Trust me, you might have a guy that has 15 years of experience, but he only has the bare minimum when it comes to those certs. They're definitely going to take that into an account and be like, well, this guy's been stagnant for the last 5 or 6 years, but you have this new guy that's hungry. He's going after every cert, every piece of education he can go for. And I tell you, that definitely takes to the hiring manager, that's a big gold star.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks for adding that in, Brent. Yeah, I was kind of back and forth, and we call that preferred or desired in that same sense, though, too. Um, so we're moving on down. So we're highlight and understand the key responsibilities now. So we're talking about self-assessing yourself to this role. When you identify those core duties of this role, focus on what the primary tasks are that make up the bulk of the role to ensure your experience aligns with the job's main functions. Meaning that when we read your objective statement and your last role, does it pretty much align to the core functions of what this job does in that sense, right? So it should be right on. Like if you're a cybersecurity professional, the bulk of what is I'm reading initially on your resume, it should say cybersecurity professional, right? Um, Also, prioritize repeated responsibilities. If we've mentioned something in a job description 2 or 3 times, pay attention to that because that's going to be part of the qualification of your resume, right? And it's also going to show up probably if you land an interview at the same time. So that's where you can start doing your interview prep should you get an interview, right? Of course, you don't probably want to do all that until you've been secured an interview. That's a lot of work to do if you don't have an interview yet. But we're just giving you that heads up, though, that this is going to be where a lot of the interview is going to come from. Match your experience, relate your previous roles to the key responsibilities, providing examples where you have demonstrated success in similar tasks. 100%. I can't stress that enough. The experience has to match, right? Especially when you start looking at a lot of the transitioning service members that we work with, right, is almost being too vague in the past experiences, right? Giving us an objective statement where it says, you did logistics, human resources, management, operations, that's too much stuff. That's just a litany of skills. And can you really say you are an expert in all 8 of those, right? Probably not. So keep that in mind too. So that's where you want to be able to match your resume against this role. And does it speak to that directly and focused at the same time? So it should have demonstrated success in similar tasks. So remember that. Understanding performance expectations. Break down each responsibility to gauge the expected performance level, right? Are we putting in there expert level presenter or whatever in there, right? Such as the volume of work or complexity to assess it if you can meet or exceed those expectations, right? So we're good at using some of those words in there. Expert in, expert level in, intermediate level in, novice level. I don't think we use novice. I can't remember what we call it off the top of my head at the moment, but we do use some of those words in our job descriptions, right? So if we're looking for someone that's an expert level in Python, that better be expert leveled in your resume though too, right? We should see Python in your resume multiple times and successes in similar tasks you've had using it, right? In those sense. So these are kind of the key 4 pieces, right? Identifying the core duties, prioritizing the repeated responsibilities, and making sure those are in your resume, matching your experience. Read something from that job description and locate it in your own resume because that's what we're doing, right? So if I'm looking for a core skill and I'm looking for it in your resume and I don't see that core skill obviously in your resume though, right? I mean, if I've got to try to read between the lines on it, it's going to be kind of tough. So, and then understanding those before, breaking that down, that's for you in that sense. But that's where we come in. That's where we're matching your experience. We're looking for where's the relation in your previous roles to these key responsibilities. That's how recruiters are looking at it. Where's the demonstrated success in similar tasks, right? Because those are the kind of check marks you got to pass before we send you forward to a hiring manager to get reviewed. So you have to, if you can't do it yourself, we're probably not going to be able to do it as well. So those are those key pieces you really have to look at and relate yourself and continue your self-assessment into this piece, because this is what's going to really help you stand out as a candidate and applying for roles here at Paraton. Brent, Jeff, anyone you want to throw on this one? Understanding the key responsibilities.
I think also when you are identifying those key responsibilities and you matching and using that language, when you are fortunate enough to be able to engage with a recruiter or one of us, it's good to include that when you are communicating that why you're a good match for the position, to provide that type of response that lines up as well. One of the things that when we are trying to assist job seekers at Peraton, I always, and Brian has mentioned this about giving us some statements as to line up with what's in those responsibilities and that experience. Give us language, give us statements stating that why you're a good match because of your experience and those things that's identified in the description.
Absolutely, and that's definitely, especially if you're working with one of us, I mean, that's kind of one of our requirements, right? Is we're going to ask you to provide some statements before we send it forward. So this is something if you're going to work with us, you're going to have to practice anyway, because we're going to ask for it. I'm going to send you some bullets. I'm like, hey, I need you to fill these out real quick before I send it forward. This type of thing. So I'm sure there's some folks on the call that have probably worked with me already and know exactly what I'm talking about in that sense, though, too, where you have to do that self-assessment as well. So very good piece of it. Focus on the required qualifications now. So now we're on to the required qualifications. So this is where the real self-assessment comes in. You've already looked at, what's the role doing? What's the key responsibilities? I can do those. So now we're talking about the required qualifications. This is pretty much what gets you past the gate, right? In that sense. So you have to assess the non-negotiable criteria, though, right? Required qualifications are essential for the role. Ensure you meet these criteria to be considered a viable candidate, though. So if you'll see, and you're looking at one that says must have active TSSCI clearance, that means it's a must have. That means if you don't have it, we're not getting it for you. You have to have it already. And that's a non-negotiable, right? If you don't have that, doesn't matter if you have 30 years of experience and we were only looking for 12, we'll still won't consider you because we're not allowed to, right? But there's other ones in there though too. So when it'll say required 10 years of experience with, Agile, eSafe or something like that, so we'll put these requireds in there, expert level with Excel or something like that. All these other things we'll put in there. So assess the non-negotiables and do you have those? Because if you don't, the road's going to get harder from there realistically as a candidate though, to be, we got to put it honest and put it on the table, right? If you're missing a must have, the chances are you don't have a shot at the role in that sense, so but you got to assess them. You got to understand which ones those are. Evaluate the hard versus soft skills. Identify whether the qualifications focus on technical abilities, hard skills, or interpersonal skills, soft skills background, and align your resume accordingly, right? So when we start talking about, if you're looking at project manager, program manager roles, chances are they're probably not focused on the technical abilities, your hard skills. Can you code? Can you stig? Can you do some stigging and all these kind of things? Chances are they're not looking for those technical abilities. They're doing those interpersonal traits or management level traits and those type of things. Does your resume speak to that? Are you applying to a technical abilities role with a soft skill resume? That type of thing as well, which will probably not speak the right language for that role, right? So evaluate what are we asking for? Are we asking for technical abilities or skills background, right? Verify education and certifications. Confirm you meet the educational background and any mandatory certifications or licenses listed in the qualifications. So, this is one I deal with on a very regular basis, and we usually list it out very well in our job descriptions as well. So we might say a bachelor's degree in 5 years, a master's degree in 2 years, and a PhD in 0 years, or an additional 5 years of experience with no degree. So the additional means if we ask for 5 as a bachelor, you would actually now have to have a minimum of 9 years if you had no degree with those skills to be considered qualified, right? Those type of things. So understanding that that's how we put that in there. So if it doesn't say that kind of information, chances are that one of those listed degrees are required, and any mandatory certification. So if it says Security Plus certification, if you don't have it and you're not in the mark to get it in like the next 90 days, it's a requirement for the role, right? So think about it. Do that honest self-assessment. Experience level requirements. Pay attention to the number of years or specific industry required skills to gauge if your background aligns with the job expectations, though. So when we talk about experience levels, right? A lot of times we run into folks that will say, well, I'm retiring, getting out 24 years, applying for this kind of role. But we're asking, we might say 15 years, 15 years of experience and a mandatory 8 years of experience in blah, blah, blah. So if you don't have that 8 years of experience, it's not 8 years of work experience, right? So it's not just 8 years of overall work history or experience, it's relevant experience. Okay. So you always have to remember that. Do you have the relevant requisite years of experience to qualify for the role? Because if we're asking for a certain number of years, it has to be noticeable on your resume. We have to be able to look at your resume, because before we can actually hire you, we have to validate that you have met the number of years required for us to hire you in that role, right? So those are kind of the four key pieces of this part of the acquired qualifications. Assessing those non-negotiables, you really got to figure those out. You really got to learn them, because those are what's going to determine really what's going to get you in or out. So here's an example. I like to throw some examples out there sometimes. So if you apply to a role, I know I can't speak for every organization, but I can tell you that here at Paraton, if you apply for a role, a lot of times we'll ask 2 or 3 upfront questions. Do you have a TSSCI? Do you have this? Are you this? That type of thing. Chances are, if you get an email within an hour to 24 hours of filling out a job application and you get the, not selected, not considered any further, chances are you didn't meet one of those non-negotiable criteria, though, right? Because that's why we ask those kind of questions, right? So it's non-negotiable. So if you say no, then we don't need to screen you any further in that sense. Jeff, Brent, anything you guys want to add on this?
Real quick, did I cut you off, Jeff? I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Some of those requisitions also will say in there, kind of along the lines of what Brian was saying, they are hard non-negotiables, but it will say X amount of years, experience in lieu of the degree. So if it calls for a master's degree and it's only, or a bachelor's degree and 6 years of education, you might have, or 6 years of experience, you might have a master's degree with only 4 years of experience. So they always take that into consideration as well. So always pay attention to the wording. If you see it says in lieu of or ability to obtain certain things, make sure you pay attention and ask those questions if you're not 100% what it's actually asking. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, Brian, you mentioned those questions, and so many times I've had people say, "Well, is it a real person looking at it? It's AI?" No, those real questions make the determination as to the recruiter to really stop the process. One of the things that always comes up whenever I'm out speaking to TAP classes or different organizations is the security clearance question. And it's a really simple process, the words to look for, as Brian mentioned: required, must have. So if you don't have that clearance level, and you don't answer the right yes or no, then they're not going to go through the rest of your resume, because you just don't meet that mandatory you must have. Able to obtain. So you got 3 words: required, must have, able to obtain, and preferred. So those are 3 key areas that you must remember to read before you apply for it, because if the recruiter doesn't see that immediately, and it doesn't mean that it's an AI, someone's not really looking at your resume, you've just been screened out. And it's think about it for when you are. I'm give you a simple example. So, first example, you're looking for a car, and you're looking for a truck, a Ford truck, F-150, right? When you search on some cardboard, you're going to search. You're going to lower that criteria. You're going to say Ford F-150, and any cars, anything that you're searching, if it's not a Ford F-150 from the year 2022 to 2025, you only want to see those vehicles. It's the same way when recruiters are screening resumes and they're using different tools. They're putting in those particular criteria of the only resumes that they currently want to to actually go through and continue reading. It's the same way when it comes when you decide to apply for a position. Just look at it that way. That if you don't meet that required criteria, such as the clearance, then the process kind of stops. So I wanted to focus on clearance because that's one of the most important things in the entire process of you applying for any job. So just want to highlight that.
No, that's a good one for sure. I mean, the ability to obtain versus must have or required is the key notice on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I mean, because we run into that one so much, right? So we won't spend too much time on this next topic. I think most people kind of get this, We're talking about those preferred qualifications or desired skills in that sense, So obviously you have those. If you have those, you're going to want to make sure they're in your resume though too, because you want to highlight those pieces, right? It showcases those additional skills. It differentiate yourself from other candidates, because I think we all know candidate pools are heavy right now, right? If you're looking for a role right now, it's tough out there. We got it. There's a lot of candidates out here. Prioritize relevant experience though. So I always tell folks if it's a preferred or desired qualification, don't over prioritize it against the required qualifications and the relevant experience though, right? It also leverages your growth potential in there. Highlights competencies such as leadership, critical thinking, problem solving that are valuable across industries. All right. So it's really important to have these in there though, if you do have some of them, but my biggest piece of advice is don't overshoot those against the required qualifications. Though you always want to make sure those are heavily addressed in your resume at the same time, because a lot of times, when you're talking about recruiters, you're looking at hundreds of resumes. If I'm looking, if I want to see if you have a desired qualification, and I'm looking for someone that has like a CYSA certification, and it's just a desired, I'm just going to control F your resume, really. CYSA is on there. Okay, yeah, it is cool, and I'll add that as part of the submission to the hiring manager, then, right? That type of stuff. So, not too much to say on the desired or preferred qualifications. Jeff or Brent, anything you want to add extra in there that might add some fuel?
No, you pretty much covered that. Those additional skills. Sometimes those are the things that bring you across the finish line. That you may highlight not only on your resume, but you're able to speak well about it. So, you just never know what can get you, push you
over the threshold.
Push you to be that number one candidate. So.
Right. So tailor your resume though. So we're going to add some of this in there though. So, as we've talked about decoding this job description, we want to talk about tailoring your resume to align with it though, right? Kind of like I said at the beginning, hey, we all get it. We've been out there, the last thing I want to do is tailor my resume for every application I put in. I mean, you want to talk about just sucking the soul out of yourself. We get it, but as long if you're applying to jobs that are relevant to your skills background, I'm a firm believer, and I've been that person myself that, if you're in your right market, you shouldn't have to do terribly much tailoring. You should just basically, adding some key pieces in there that this particular role is asking for that, wasn't on the last role I applied to or whatever. So, always highlighting that relevant experience in your resume though. Identify those key terms and phrases in the job description, such as skills and responsibilities, and incorporate them in your resume to match the employer's language though, right? So whatever language that organization we are using in a job description, because like I said, it might be called 3 or 4 different things, whatever knowledge, skill, or ability it is, but make sure in your resume, you've got it listed the same way we've asked for it in that sense, right? Because you got to remember, we're recruiters, right? We're recruiters over on this side. We haven't done these jobs. We're not experts at all these other roles. We're just experts at our job, right? So I don't know all the 15 different versions of what that tool could be called or this particular skill could be called. I need the one that's in my job description. That's all I know, right? So
good point, Brian. Good point.
So align your experience with those job responsibilities. Customize your work history, emphasizing the tasks and achievements that directly relate to the role's primary responsibilities, right? Because that's what we're looking for. Because the primary responsibilities is as difficult as that sounds when we talk about tailoring your resume. I'm a firm believer, though, if you're in your right genre, though, that's not a lot of work, though. It's just possibly manipulating a few phrases, maybe a sentence or two that makes it more directly to this particular role. Um, you know, so it shouldn't be that terribly long. It might, if somebody's learning how to do this on this call today for the first time, yeah, the first couple of times you do it, yeah, it's probably going to seem a little more difficult. But once I think after you've done it 2 or 3 times, you're going to start to realize that your resume is probably going to start to function a little faster for you, though, too, um, in that sense. So emphasize required and preferred skills, though. If you've got if you've got all the required stuff, you've got some of the preferred or desired skills, make sure they are prominently featured in the required qualifications, and if applicable, highlight any preferred qualifications to stand out. So when you start talking about the required qualifications, you got to realize, as recruiters, we look at a lot of resumes, so we always start with what we have, right? So when we say emphasize those, think about this: how a recruiter would look at your resume. Hit Control F. If I see it in my job description that I need this, and I hit Control F, is it in your resume? I'll give you an example. I had a Java developer one time applying to a 15-year experience Java developer role. Got into his resume, hit Control F, and hit Java, and the word Java literally popped up like 3 times. I have 15 years of experience. That's not gonna. You see, that's like the title of the role is Java developer. So,
Right.
in that sense, so emphasizing those required skills, and making sure your resume has those in your resume, and not from 15 years ago either. They should be relevant skills you have now, right? Because that's what we're looking for. Showcase any relevant accomplishments. So too, this is where I start talking about, when we talk about interviewing, we talk about the STAR method: the situation, task, action, and results. But in this part of it, when I talk about focusing on achievements and adding your results in there, I usually just say, just take the situation out, just add as the task, actions, and results. Did A, was tasked with A, did B, resulting in C. That easy, and that'll add accomplishment to your resume. It showcases ability to function in the role. So, and if you haven't done that before, if it's your first time you're going to do it, yeah, of course it's going to take you more time. But once you've done it, it can stay in there forever, if you will. So it's not something you would constantly or rapidly have to change every time you're applying to roles in that sense. But these are, when you talk about tailoring your resume, these are kind of the 4 highlighted points for you. Highlighting your relevant experience, and then aligning that experience with the job responsibilities, emphasizing that then with the required and any desired skills you might have, and then showcasing relevant accomplishments that are relevant to that type of role. Pretty straightforward, right?
That's pretty. Brian, I would tell you, if I was a job seeker, I'd take a picture of that slide right there. That gets the attention of recruiters immediately. That slide right there, when it comes to applying. That's it.
I mean, honestly, that's how this is how us as recruiters over the years when I was recruiting, this is how I qualified people. I looked for relevant experience. Does it align with my job? Do they have the required skills? Where's any relevant accomplishments? Cool. Yep. Hey, they hit all 4. I'm going to send it to the hiring manager then. Yep. So this is kind of giving everyone that inside track, right? So this is how the talent acquisition side of the industry qualifies you for a role at the same time. It's just a back end. So you're beating us to the punch, if you will. So this is how you're going to beat us to the punch, right? You're going to make sure you have those 4 things in there, because then it really makes it hard to say no. But I also would like to add in there, though, too, something I do run into on a very case-by-case basis is you might be the most qualified person for the role, meet everything we have all the relevant experience, it aligns very well with the job description, you meet all the required skills and abilities we're looking for, apply to the job, and you get reviewed, not selected fairly quick. Well, there's also sometimes other things happen in the background, though, folks. So I know a lot of folks like to get turned, I'm fully qualified for the role. And then we'll finally reach out to me, and I'm like, oh, they already had an offer out on it. So they just weren't reviewing any more candidates type thing as well. So I'd like folks to be aware of that as well, because roles do stay on the careers website until it has a start date, right? It's still an open job until somebody's agreed to have a start date on it at that same time. So an offer doesn't mean it comes off, because people decline those sometimes. and more often than you think, actually. As folks that have been doing this a long time, I've got a lot of people that have declined really great offers because they got $2 more $1,000 somewhere else. So, so this is the key piece of it. I mean, Jeff, Brent, I mean, anything you guys would like to add on this as far as how to use it as a candidate?
I think one point also, Brian, that you mentioned, if you are, especially, and this goes for those that are transitioning out of the military, if there's a system that you use in the military with a different name that's similar to what they use here in the civilian sector, make sure that you are aligning that.
We got a lot of feedback.
Brent, is that you?
That was me typing. I apologize.
Okay. So one of the things to just remember that, not all recruiters have served in the military, so they don't always understand systems that we use in the military that may be similar to what's on the civilian sector. So make sure that you are transferring that language, those terms, because a recruiter could say, well, I didn't see that keyword, I didn't see this particular term, and you could say, well, we do the same thing in the military, it's just called this differently. So make sure that you don't make the assumption that every recruiter that are out there has a background in the military and understand some of the systems that we use in the military that may do the same thing but just have a different term or title or definition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The biggest part that I have to this slide, Brian, is when you're reading over these descriptions, if you see a word, just like you said at the beginning, if you see a word that repeats itself, not just within the actual title of the requisition, but if you see words that repeat itself that are requirements, you definitely want to make sure that your resume mirrors exactly kind of what it says. If it tells you have to have certain experience and hands-on with a certain platform or extensive knowledge with another platform, definitely make sure you're reading that requisition and mirroring your resume off of those statements. So if you see it repeat itself, definitely make sure it's repeating itself on that resume as well.
Absolutely. That's just how you can dig in, folks, and really start to stand out as a candidate, and it really helps. I can tell you, I can look at a resume and know immediately, and almost, because we always talk about that 10 to 15 second recruiter overview, right? So you really only got about 10 or 15 seconds on your initial recruiter review to catch an eye. And it's funny though that when I can find those resumes very fast though, the ones that align well, I can find them real fast though. And then there's most of the time you still got to give it a little extra peek, so you want to be the one that people can find fast, right? Well, it takes me 10, 15 seconds. Now I can investigate a little bit further, be like, yeah, person looks qualified. Let me send it forward, right? So the goal is to really take the thought process out. Keep us guessing. We shouldn't have to determine if you're qualified. We should know you're qualified in that sense. So we'll go into the last topic. I think this is the last part of it before we go into the Q&A here in about 10 minutes. So preparing for the interview though. So this is a huge part of the process though too. So decoding that job description and using it to prepare for your interview is where you can really nail and destroy these interviews, right? So what you're going to look at when you start looking about interviewing, right? So most of the time interviews are going to be multi-person interviews, right? They're usually 2 people, 3 people, right? That might be asking different questions. It kind of depends. Sometimes they're one-on-one, sometimes they're 2 or 3 people. But you can really use this job description to anticipate role-specific questions, though, right? Because we're not going to ask willy-nilly questions when you're interviewing, right? We're going to ask questions specific about this role. Tell me about how you utilize this tool or something like that. So use the job description to predict interview questions about key responsibilities and how your experience aligns with the role, though, right? Because that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about in an interview these key responsibilities and how do you align with this, right? So prepare examples of relevant experience, right? So that's when we're going to start talking about those behavioral interview questions that we're going to ask, right? So you can prepare those relevant examples. Review the job description and be ready to share specific examples. I almost said Pacific caught myself though. Share specific examples from your past that demonstrate your ability to meet the listed responsibilities, though, right? So we're going to start talking about those STAR method questions, right? Tell me about this. Tell me about a time you used this. What was the situation, task, action, and results, right? Coming from that job description, because that's what we want to know, right? Highlight required and preferred skills. Be prepared to discuss how you possess the required qualifications and explain how any preferred skills give you an advantage to this role, right? And then we're going to understand employer expectations. Study the job description to gain insight into the company's priorities, allowing you to tailor your resume with their needs and culture at the same time, right? So these are kind of the 4 pieces you can pull out of this one. If everybody knows, I got a little flow going here, right? 4. Everything's 4. There's 4 little chunks you can always take out of something. So anticipate those role-specific questions. We really can't emphasize that more, where you can anticipate the questions, prepare your relevant experience, and highlight those required skills, right? So those are where those questions are going to come from, right? Because when we go into interviews as interviewers, we come with set questions already that we have extrapolated from the job description, right? We know what we need. We know what we want from this role. So if it's a Scrum Master role, we're going to probably talk about Scrum Master things. Tell me about time you in a situation. I can't remember any of those questions off of my head. You got one, Jeff? I can't remember.
I don't have anything either.
It's Friday, y'all.
Yeah.
So that's where you can anticipate those specific questions, right? Because, and I highly suggest, if everyone likes what we've talked about today, absolutely come to our follow-on sessions though too, because we have some really good other preparatory sessions we do, especially when we start getting into the final one of mastering the interview. When we talk about how you can do all this in much more detail, because this is more about decoding that job description and that one we talk about really extrapolating this information from there and using it to really prepare those STAR questions, right? Or answers, if you will.
Right. Hey, Brian. So a few, I know I had it somewhere. Some samples. Tell me about a time you had to improve a process. Tell me about a time you had to resolve a conflict. So they may ask you, if it's like you said, a Java developer. Tell me a time where you had to improve this process. What were some of the obstacles? What did you learn from it? What would you do differently? What was the outcome? What was the objective? What was the results? Was it the measurable outcome, impact, improvements, things you would change? So as you mentioned, Brian, as you start applying for those, especially when you're talking about upper level management, leading programs, directors, you're definitely going to be asked STAR type situational questions, because that's really part of the job description when it comes to management is, handling challenges and tasks and managing people and what would you do, all those types of things. So, and they're going to pull them from out of that, like as Brian mentioned, out of those job descriptions. For example, it may give an example of experience managing large teams. Well, you better get ready for some behavioral questions. Because managing teams is managing people, processes, and so you just got to expect those. So you can't be like shocked when they ask those kind of questions. You really need to be prepared to answer those types of questions.
And I'd like to really throw on top of that though too. I think Jeff brought in some really good examples right there, because I know I totally brain dumped them there for a minute. So, you really brought up those great questions, and I think what the key takeaway from that is though too is when what we're talking about though, and what Jeff's mentioning and answering those questions and preparing for them, what we're also talking about is focus and relevancy though, because if you've used the job description to prepare those kind of questions and answers, those STAR method answers and those behavioral question answers, you're going to be able to relate it directly to that role and how you've functioned in that type of role before, versus if you're going to try to just pop it off the top of your head when you weren't really prepared for that question. Yes. What happens is people have a really good capability of going off in left field with some other thing that they did that isn't even relevant to the job, and it really gives us no idea then on your capabilities at the same time. So that's why this prep stuff is really important, in there. And then as we're about to go in our Q&A, we'll go ahead and close it on down as we're going to talk about real quick how to request assistance from us, from Peraton's Military and Veterans team. So we're pretty easy to work with. I can tell you that. I can see some names in here, so I know some of the folks on here have worked with us already. If it's your first time reaching out to us, and this, what I will preface this with is, this goes for everywhere though, right? So if you're reaching out to anybody, whether it's on LinkedIn, any other company or organization, this is your way in the front door, right? This is the way to get your knock answered. So if it's your first time reaching out to me or us, the team, anybody, always attach your resume, right? Include any role ID numbers you've already applied to or jobs you're interested in applying to, and include qualification bullets and how you meet that role's qualifications up front. Certainly allow time for a response. I know here at Peraton, the three of us are busy as all get out. So there might be times we're kind of out of the office for almost 2 or 3 days straight because of events or other things we have going on. I know we're probably some of the most responsive people out there, but we do have our periods as well, especially if it's on LinkedIn. LinkedIn can get a little messy for me sometimes. I know for most of us. So,
Yes.
But the key takeaway here is this is where you're doomed. If avoid asking for available positions. Don't reach out send me a resume and be like, hey, hey Jeff, hey Brian, hey, here's my resume, looking for work. Do you know any jobs I might be qualified for? No, I don't. And what I'm not going to do is spend an hour searching my job board for you in that sense. So it is a requirement. This is a requirement across the industry, really. So if a lot of you have sent a lot of emails to folks like, hey, here's my resume, you got any jobs I'm qualified for? I have no idea, man. I don't know who you are, and I'm not going to read your resume from head to toe to determine what you're qualified for here. What you're going to do is jump on my job board, though, research our jobs, then hit me back and let me know what you've applied to. And then what I can do is fully advocate internally for you to hopefully get an interview here, because now I'm going to ask you, hey, send me some bullets real quick on exactly how you meet these requirements for this role. And I will send that directly to the hiring manager, and I guarantee we'll have a lot more success that way. So, Jeff, anything you want to add on this one, Brent? Because I know you go through the same crisis here.
No, that's dead on. The one thing about to summarize this slide, Brian, is, did you make it easy for the recruiter to help you? Did you make it easy for us to help you, or did you make us do work such as, do you guys got a job that's a match for me? Hey, I applied for an analyst position in Chantilly. You just made it hard for us. Now we got to do extra work just for something that you should have done. So if you follow this guideline, you got a easier chance of us getting a faster response, rather than putting you to the side saying, I'll get back to that one later, because right now I'm going to have to do a lot of research to find out. If you follow this guideline, I would even say this is a guideline to follow with any organization, not just Peraton. I think this was a good strategy. Whoever you're engaging at any company, if you provide this information, you've done the work. It's like, okay, let me, this is easy for me to have a quick look or pass it on or forward it to whoever it may be. So I'm always, if you make it easy for me, but if it comes to the point where it's like, now we got to have 2 or 3 different chats, you introducing, you didn't tell me anything, you didn't send me anything, you didn't show me that you did any work. It's just, we got to have 3 different interactions for you to provide me this, when you should have probably did it in the first introduction.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is. And the reason for this, though, for the folks listening and so forth, is it's time management for us, right?
Yes.
Meaning that, I could get 30 of these a day. I might get 20, 30 of these a day. And it's just if I manage my time correctly, I couldn't do that for everybody, and not to mention that sucks a lot of me too, looking for jobs for everyone. So, because that's not what we do. We're not I forget what they're called, those things where, you give me a resume and they find you work. I can't, like a recruiting outsourcing type thing, or a candidate outsourcing type thing. So we're not that, folks. But what we can do is with that information, the beauty about our team is we do have access to every role, every recruiter, everything part of talent acquisition really here at Paraton and the role that three of us support. So the good thing is we can really advocate internally for that. We do reach out directly to these folks with the information you provide us that we ask for and say, hey, working with this person, can you look at their resume, look at their basic and role specific qualification information and let me know if you're interested. And that works out pretty well. So what we'll do, folks, is we'll go ahead and move on to the Q&A. We won't do a conclusion. Those are
Hey, Brian, I got something just real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So one thing I know that's never going to go anywhere and that you and Jeff are both real big in is using AI, Chat GPT, and things like that. And one thing we did learn the other day when we had that intro that you pulled, that me and Jeff went to with you, was you can actually use Chat GPT and you can input the requisition, like all the required skills, the job description, all those things. You can input that into Chat GPT and ask it, hey, create me an interview questionnaire or interview questions for this particular requisition, and Chat GPT will actually spit that out. And I just wanted to say that is a good way to also test yourself and prepare better for those interviews that you have.
Absolutely. It's a good one out there. That's a good one to throw out there. We're thinking about making a whole podcast on just doing some of this AI stuff, folks. So it's in the works. We got one of our good machine learning AI guys in contact with us, and we're slowly and surely putting something together. I will not fool everyone. I am not a machine learning AI expert myself, but that's why we employ them and I can utilize them as well. So if you're looking to get in contact with us, obviously, Brian Acton, Jeff Carson, Brent Buffington, look us up on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to us, militaryconnect@paraton.com. And we also go to our careers website, careers.paraton.com. And if you're on that, we also have a military and veterans page where we have a calendar of events on there of virtual and in-person career fairs that we go to, some more military-friendly roles, if you will, roles that are specific to folks that might be getting out of the military or a heavily military background experienced, if you will, and so forth. We have recorded versions of our older podcasts as well that you can watch on there. So we appreciate everyone coming today, and we'll move into the Q&A. Yeah, folks. I know Brent's been. I see him typing over there like a madman. So.
Yes, sir. I've got everything knocked out up to this point, Brian, but there's one that I was hoping you could jump on, which is Cody. He says, does Paraton also partner with DoD Skill Bridge and corporate fellowships for retiring service members, or is the focus more for direct hiring? So I know you are our Paraton Skill Bridge SME, so I was hoping you could jump in on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a DoD Skill Bridge authorized Skill Bridge provider. I'm the Skill Bridge guy here at Paraton. So we do have a pretty robust Skill Bridge program. It's not operated like a lot of folks know Hiring Our Heroes and so forth, where they do those cohorts of they have like a spring, fall cohorts or whatever, however they do it. I'm not 100% sure. So ours is done more on a case-to-case or individualistic basis. It's usually done on a by name request basis, in the sense of someone that's working with one of our programs might be retiring or separating from the military, and that program knows it, and they'll be like, hey, Jeff, we see Jeff's getting out. We'd like to bring him on as a Skill Bridge internship, and we do it like that. Or you can seek out a Skill Bridge program. But what I cannot do, I know I get asked this one probably 10 times a day. I cannot provide you any employee's contact information on any office anywhere at the organization, though. So you do have to locate the program on your own if you don't know where one's at. But we're a lot of places, though. But we do focus on hiring from it, though. So we do have like a 95% hiring rate from our Skill Bridge, though. And I think we actually offer employment to everyone. The 5% comes from folks that declined the offer. What else we got? But that's a good, I can start, if we don't have any questions at the moment, folks might still be listening, though. I know, we could probably pop in some of those little AI pieces, though, too, because there are tools out there, too, especially if you're looking to prep for an interview. there are some AI tools out there where you can pop, like Brent was saying, you can pop these job descriptions in there and do a practice interview with an AI. Yeah, it might not be perfect, right? But what better way to practice off that actual job description? Because if you're trying to practice interview with like family or friends, everybody's I think tried it once, and that's got to be the most awful thing on the planet, right? Because it's too hard, right? Because you know each other, and you don't actually know some of these other, the person doesn't know the work, whatever. But these AI tools, stuff like that, can be very beneficial because at least you ran through speaking this type of questions through the AI bot, though, and it speaks. It'll actually speak to you and answer you back. So, those are good ones to try as well, as in preparing for some of these, especially if you're transitioning out and you haven't interviewed in forever, if ever even. So, because I think it goes without saying. I think we all come into interviews very confident, but I can personally attest to myself during interviews that um, you know, interview's going great, built some good rapport, and then it just falls left on me, asked me one question, and my mind just went bunk. The bulb just went out, and I just like deer in the headlights, like, oh crap, what did I do? Because I didn't prepare and stuff like that. So, that's why a lot of this stuff is very important in preparing for that, especially if you haven't interviewed in a long time. We're just lucky enough that we're folks that talk like this regularly. So.
Yeah, Brian, I think that as you mentioned about us, we're going to be preparing some actual stuff to help you guys as far as using AI, the basics.
Yeah.
We're not experts, but we do use it. There are a lot of free courses out there that you can take on how to use AI responsible. But some of the things that I believe that is basically how to use basic prompts. One of the things that I typically do, and sometimes I share little cheat sheets, is one is, for example, as a prompt. Say we're a defense contractor, and one question you could ask it is, act as a federal defense contractor recruiter. Compare my resume to this job description, and tell me where I could get screened out. That's a prompt that you're basically, without a recruiter doing it, you're doing it prior to you applying for this particular position. You can simply put your resume in and that job description and ask it, where would you get screened out for this particular position? And it's going to read it. It's going to read your resume, and it may say, it requires a CI poly. I did not see CI poly. I saw TSSCI. This could possibly get you screened out. So just simple things like that we are we're going to learn, and we're going to be better to present. But I think until that time frame, using different prompts, there's some resources, some free trainings that you can take. But those are sometimes when I have complex people that have applied for a position and they follow the guideline that we gave, that Brian provided, as far as when you're reaching out to us. And I just wanted to do a quick, where would this person, where's some of the should I say blind spots? That's before you apply. So that's just one example that when it comes to prompts is to ask it that question. And it'll give you an honest assessment, because it's going to read your resume and it's going to read the job description. And it'll identify some areas that you don't have. And it may be one of those minimum requirements.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, these AI tools, folks, I mean, I wouldn't be scared to use them. Now, I wouldn't have them build a complete resume or anything like that,
right,
without vetting the crap out of it. But
definitely,
at the same time, I mean, you can even, like Jeff's talking, you can, as rate me as a candidate for this role, even. I mean, simple stuff like that. Which has got to give you an idea, where your resume might need some work at the same time. Because we're all aware that out here today's job market is a rough one. We got it. We know. We see the recs that we have on a regular basis. We see the number of candidates that have applied to them and so forth. So I don't have my calendar in front of me. Unfortunately, it went dark. But I believe next month is our LinkedIn one. So is it next month or?
Let me check real quick.
Yeah, because the LinkedIn one's one of my favorites though too. Because this is where you can really start setting yourself up if you're looking to get connections to better connect yourself into companies and connect yourself to the right people that might be able to help doing referrals and stuff like that. Because a lot of companies do offer, especially in the cleared space, when you start talking about work that's in the cleared space, a lot of companies do offer employee referral bonuses. Not that they're $1 million or anything like that, but maybe you get, $1,500 or $2,000, to reach out to an employee. We'll show you how to do all that kind of stuff, how to find those kind of people, how to communicate with them, and so forth. What's the next one?
Ryan, the next one is Mastering Resume Applicant Tracking System. In May is the LinkedIn, May 22nd.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what we'll do is I'll put this in the chat. We also list all of our upcoming hiring events and also our podcast. So I'll throw that in the chat as well, so you can kind of track it. Maybe put it on your calendar, so that you don't miss it. So I'll put that.
Everybody be aware you will be getting an invite for the next one, though. I will send an invite to everyone out here that joined us today.
Real quick, Brian, I don't think and Jeff, I haven't heard this mentioned yet, but I'm definitely kind of seeing it being asked but not asked. But I know everybody does apply to 1,000 different roles, especially in today's market. You'll send out 50 different resumes to 50 different positions, and they're all 50 completely different resumes because they're for different positions. Just so you know, and like I said, I don't know if it got mentioned, but I didn't hear it, is our ATS system will only hold the very last resume that you submit. So if you submitted 10 resumes for 10 different positions, the very last position that you submit your resume to is the only resume that's going to be viewable within our ATS system. So when it comes to a situation like that, don't think, well, I submitted 50 different resumes. They're only going to see one, and it's the very last one. So in a case like this is whenever you reach out to one of us and you say, hey, you know what, I've submitted for 4 different positions, or I'm getting ready to, here's 4 different tailored resumes. Would you please mind, sending those to the hiring manager versus your basic one that you were going for, just a basic network engineer, or you're going for a SME level on something. Make sure you one of us and say, hey, I have a tailored resume for that. Would you mind pushing that forward? Because otherwise they're not going to see it.
Absolutely. And I think I could add on to that though, too, like I was talking about earlier in the podcast though, too, is, I mean, if you're, like I said, if you're start hitting like 50, 75 roles you applied to, and it's just been complete crickets, there's a disconnect somewhere though. There has to be, unless you have a skill that there's that large of a candidate pool in, which some people do. Don't get me wrong. I'm around here. I see what's in our requisitions all the time. Some people do. Timing's key though too. When you're applying to roles, I think a lot of folks don't think about that though too. So if a lot of times they'll tell you when it was posted. So if it's a skill, if it's been on there for 3 or 4 weeks, I can tell you that the chances of it not being in the process of something is probably pretty low, pretty high in that or low, because there's something happening. I can tell you here at Paraton, like we have like a 30-day hiring average, right? That's from posting to interview to all that to start. And that says 30, 35 days. I can't remember what it was exactly. So, I mean, we put a rec out there. I mean, 48 hours, it might have 80 people applied to it. So if something's been out there for 2, 3, 4 weeks, chances are it's probably deeper into processes too. But if you applied to 50 to 75, that's a red flag. Your resume might not be hitting right. Other than that.
Time is of the essence. And one of the things, and not to get too far into the session on LinkedIn, is the reason why we tell you guys to connect with us and to follow us on LinkedIn is because many of our colleagues post their upcoming hiring events, and they also post their individual positions that they are sourcing for. So if there's a position that myself, Brian, and Brent, we repost from another at Paraton, the likelihood is it's their position. So this applies not only to Paraton, but any position that you apply for. If that particular person has posted that job, you definitely want to connect with that person. In addition to applying for the position, you definitely want to connect with that person and send them a message and say, hey, I saw that you posted this position on LinkedIn. I've applied. Definitely want to think I'm a good match for it. It would make sense to not simply just see the position and apply, but you actually you saw the person, especially if the person has a title of talent acquisition or recruiter. The likelihood is it's probably his or her position. And so, as Brian mentioned, time is of the essence, because if that position's been out there 7 days, it could be 50 people that have applied for it. They started screening and calling and interviewing. So, position posted up there, and it's been many times in LinkedIn it'll say it's been posted in the last 24 hours, or it was posted 2 days ago. And so, not to go too far into LinkedIn, just want to throw that nugget out there until we get to May.
That's a good one. I see Tammy asked, though. This is kind of an interesting one. She said, Tammy said, I had what I called an old school resume, and it seemed to receive some good hits. And then 2 recruiters suggested to change your resume to a more updated format. Changed my formatting and not received any interviews. Interested in your thoughts. My first thought, I'll be honest, when I read this one, though, this question from Tammy was, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. What's an old school format? I don't know what an old school format would be. Like, there hasn't been any changes to how we format, how we look at resumes in that sense, that I'm aware of anyway. So I'm not really sure what an old school format would be versus an updated format. And Jeff or Brent, you guys have? So I'm curious on this one, because I don't know what an old school format is, because to me it's all this. I mean,
and also the context of it. Also the context. Remember, there's different there's different industries so as well. So you say old school, do you mean government resume? Yeah, I mean,
because I don't really know what an old school resume would be, but
me neither. And sometimes when people tell you to change your resume, their recommendations. Say, for example, if you walk up to me with a government resume, and I may tell you, and it's 6 pages long, I may tell you, you probably need to change that to a 2-page and summarize that 6 pages into a 2-page resume. So the context of what you mean by old school, but just remember, you're gonna get a lot of advice, and people make different suggestions. And there's a lot of different industries out there that like their resumes
very specific, like AWS and Microsoft.
Yes. And as I mentioned, universities, nonprofits, some of them may want a cover letter. So it's don't get into the mindset of one size fits all. It's a lot of different industries.
But when it comes to the resume, though, too, I'm a real big fan of simple, because I know we look at a lot of resumes, folks, and so, getting creative and fancy on a resume, it's probably not good, to be honest with you, because it just makes us have to search and find information, really. I'm real big on plain text resumes. Your name, city and state you live in, contact information, clearance level, objective, executive summary, certifications and educations, and then right into your work history. Absolutely. That should be the basic. For me, that should be the basic, and the reason for that is, because especially when we get into next month's podcast, when we talk about resumes and applicant tracking system optimization, that's where we start talking about the 10 to 15 second rule, right? Where us as talent acquisition folks, we only have about 10 to 15 seconds to scan your resume, and it's not to read it. It's to hit like a very cyclic pattern on your resume to see if it hits some spots, and if it doesn't, next.
You said it, Brian. You said not to read it, because you just don't have time to sit around and read resumes all day just for context. So,
right, but they do get read, but not initially. Initially. It has to pass that initial scan.
Right.
So putting that that plain text with your contact information, security clearance, executive summary that's straight and relative and focused and to the point of who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it. And I'm a person that likes to see education and certifications after that, and then the work history, because if it's a role, especially if it's IT technologies related roles, and a lot of the roles are going to require certifications, you don't want those on the last page, because I don't read the last page. I read the first 10 seconds. So you got to get past that first 10 seconds. But we do talk about that in the next podcast and so forth. So, but I couldn't really tell you, but yeah, I wouldn't call that as a negative thing though, too, Tammy, when you're looking at didn't get any interviews. I mean, it could just be, I don't know. I'd have to see your resume. I'll be honest with you. You can email it to us at militaryconnect@paraton.com. Right. Oh, I see she responded down there too. Said her resume looked dated. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, Tammy. I don't know. I'm like I said, 25 years, and I don't know what an old school format resume is or a new school format. I mean, I've seen some weird stuff. Don't get me wrong. Where I've seen like the what do they call those, Brent? Like the reverse chronological resume or something like that, where somebody started with their last job first or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, nah, man, yeah, don't, absolutely not. That's a no-go. You'll never pass muster for me on that. Let's see. Tina, would you recommend focusing the resume on the most recent 10 and 12 years to better align with the role? Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, you always want the most recent relevant experience for sure, especially if it's military. I know when you start talking about transitioning military, a lot of times we jump out into these various other little duties we got to do that still trying to figure out how to make it focused and relevant, so it doesn't like take you out of scope, if you will, to what your background totally is, which can be difficult to do, but it can be done. It can definitely be done. I definitely say use some, maybe even some chat GPT or some of the AI tools to take what that secondary duty might have been and see what can I extrapolate from this that will still align with my career set.
Did we lose Jeff?
Yeah, I think he might have lost connection or something.
Oh, okay.
Brent, is that you, Brent?
Yes, sir.
I'm
with you.
No, I was reading. There's another Brent in the question.
There is. Yes, sir. He was just asking in reference to anything past like the 10 or 12. Would you still add it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan on it as long as it's relevant. I compare. Honestly, I don't think anybody really cares anymore if your resume is 3 pages long, if it's relevant information, though. If it's relevant to the career field. And what I say like that, though, too, I can tell you, like folks like ourselves, Jeff, hopefully he can get back on, Jeff, Brent, myself. I mean, I used to be an infantry guy, Army recruiter too then, Marine infantry guy, Army recruiter, did some other stuff. But that stuff's not even on my resume, to be honest with you, because it's old and it's irrelevant, though, too. It's not relevant to my career path. So you definitely don't want to be with those folks that are putting like, meritorious service medal, M9 pistol qualified, and that kind of stuff on your resume. I see those all the time. Don't list your medals. Those are, I get it. Well, I have some too. I mean, but it's not for this part of life though, right? It's not for job search. So, because folks don't understand what those are, if you don't know, you don't know. So, in no sense.
I'm back, Brian. Sorry about that, man.
No worries.
Wi-Fi went down. They building a gobs of data centers in Stafford, so
that's what I heard. You've been all over the news. Good stuff. Any other questions? We got any other questions? Hope we get some popped in. If not, we can always call it early too. Let's give it a minute. All right. Thanks, Monique.
CJ just wrote, Brian, I believe you mentioned the job description repeats certain words. Would you recommend mirroring the word with the associated tasks as skills or using the word multiple times?
Both. So definitely associate it with tasks though too, because what it's going to do is incorporate then your tasks, actions, and results, right? I'm trying to think of one to come off the top of my head. So I just use what I do kind of as an example. So if they're talking about, iSIMs, because that's the applicant tracking system we use, right? Is iSIMs. So, if I'm reading a job description, I'm applying to a job and they're talking about, iSIMs, ability to maneuver, disposition, and do candidates and ISIMs, and create campaigns and ISIMs and this and that. I'm definitely going to create ISIMs is going to be all over my resume, but then I'm also going to associate, hey, I've created candidate email campaigns with ISIMs using the CXM, all those kind of things, resulting in wherever 5 million hires. Because I'm Superman, right? No, but so definitely. But even on some of those smaller tasks, even if you see it repeated in there, I personally believe when you look at the requirements and you look at the responsibilities, and you'll see those things in there, is definitely having them in even the small ones. I'm a big fan of even putting at least a touch of some of the small ones in there, because you want it's word association for me, I guess, is if you will. Because as a recruiter that, as someone that's been that kind of recruiter that's had jobs I had to fill, and, because you have to keep in mind, recruiters, we're not masters of every job we recruit for. We just look to find the qualified candidate based off the job description and the other information we may have from the hiring manager of the team, right? So when you're looking at it like that, that's why you want to make that word association, right? Because I'm using, I'm not a data scientist, right? So all I know is the tools, some Python or whatever the other one is. I forget now, but I know the tools, but I don't know how to use those tools in that sense. Like I'm not doing Power BI or whatever it is, and those type of things. But those are the words I'm looking for. So if I know they say they need someone with Python and then also knows Power BI, as a recruiter, I'm just control F-ing, this and that, because once you pass that kind of quality control a little bit, that's when you go to the hiring manager who actually reads your resume and determines, yes, what this person said sounds like they might be a fit.
Yes.
So you got to remember that.
Brian, you basically said resume gets you the interview gets you the hire.
Yep. Yeah. So following those steps to create the resume gets you through the recruiter. Because then once you get to the recruiter, you get to the hiring manager, who then is going to determine, are you that fit? And chances are they're going to be more technically proficient because they know what they have to hire, right? They know those roles. They're hiring there. So, I think one thing to throw out there though too, for any folks that still may be listening, is that the hiring manager isn't a job. It's a task. So the hiring manager is someone that is probably a program manager or a project leader or someone they've designated to hire for these particular roles, that is a SME or an expert in whatever's happening on that particular program or project or contract. So it's just a task that they do. So that there's no hiring manager isn't a full-time job in that sense. So because I get asked a lot of times, can you give me the hiring manager's number? I cannot give you employee contact information. No. I just want everybody to know that though, that hiring manager it's a side duty, I guess, if you will.
Additional duty, yeah, Brian. I emphasize that as well when I'm speaking to TAP classes. There's no guy sitting around all day interviewing people.
Yeah. I mean, that would drive you insane though too. If you really would you really want to interview 8 people a day? That would blow your mind. But any other questions in there? This is going faster. Python is the devil. Yes. I think Brent answered all those.
I didn't answer the very top one CJ just wrote. As far as decoding the job description, should you use Visualize Tool versus Power BI?
It's going to depend on the job description though, right? If they're asking for Power BI, drop it, because that's how I'm going to look for it though, right? If I'm a recruiter, I don't know I've done those I do these data scientist roles all the time. To be honest, I don't even know what the visual tool is. If you're talking other something, then I'm assuming that's how you present it. I know enough that I know Python and Power BI is how the data is presented. It's extrapolated and presented. But if they're asking for those tools, definitely name them specifically 100%. Because too broad means, well, what visual tools then? Because I don't search for it like that though either. as a non-expert of data science, I just control F. I know I need Power BI and Python, so I'm Power BI, Python, is it in there? You want to make sure it's got a significant presence then though too, right? Or as much as you can put in there with those, but including in those kind of tasks, actions, and results and so forth. It really helps it stand out. But that stuff's hard though too, because you data guys, you're good at doing this stuff. You're kind of good at putting some of the stuff together. So the candidate pools are, you definitely want to work with one of us because your candidate pools are usually pretty good. And Celeste said, is a skill bridge program for veterans. It is not. So you do have to still be on active duty service to participate in the skill bridge program, because it is only for separating military who are within 180 days of retirement or separation.
Sorry, I messed up my wording on that one. I said, yes, it's for transitioning veterans. So I apologize for that.
We all do it.
Tina just wrote, would you prefer a single combined document with a CV and supporting materials, certificates, license letters of recommendations, etc., or just upload the CV? You can add attachments on our ATS system, so you can attach those additional items.
I can.
You definitely want to make sure that resume is the highlight, so you can upload that resume, then go to additional items and upload the additional stuff, because
the CV.
99% of the time they're going to ask you for those certificates and license down the road if the job actually requires it, or the position. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think you kind of nailed that one, Brent, because the difference between like that CV, the curriculum vitae versus a resume though too. I'm not aware of any rules here that require that, but it could be, because any verification of certificates and required licenses or recommendations are going to be part of the hiring process, if you will. So once you got an offer, there's people that are here that are paid to investigate that, to make sure you do have those certificates and licenses and stuff, and so forth. So yeah, I would, for here anyway, every company is different though. I've been out here long enough. I know that some do look for the CV only, in that sense. But I know here resume, but we can always attach a CV too, as well. But chances are, unless the hiring manager is asking for it, I don't really know. See, Celeste, for contingent contracts, contingent work, can we submit your resume without editing it for a specific job description? That's a tough one. I guess it kind of depends, because a lot of times we'll have the role still listed, because sometimes we will do contingent offers though, meaning that even though if it's contingent on if we win the award, we do contingent, not every time. It's going to be specific to each particular piece of work they're working on. But we do contingent offers sometimes though too, where should we win the award, we would offer you the job at that sense. So it's 50-50. I would say if you're applying to those kind of roles, for sure, I would definitely say reach out to one of us, because we can look it up on the back end here and kind of see, like, because I can tell you it doesn't give us a lot of information though. So like the three of us aren't ingrained into the business development to the extent that we know when things might be getting awarded. There's times we do know on some, just because we're in some conversations. But I don't know about Brent and Jeff specifically, but I mean, I don't know particularly too many when things are being predicted to be awarded. That's just not my lane.
No, sometimes in the requisition that will have the expected award date. I do see that sometimes in some of the jobs.
What's in a blue vision?
Yeah. So sometimes I scroll through and I'm looking to see if it's a funded position. It'll say expected award date, July 2026.
Yeah.
That's something that I think the benefit of having us as contacts so we could find out information, because sometimes people applying for jobs thinking it's an immediate hire, or they didn't see the word proposal in the job description at the bottom.
Yeah.
Maybe didn't stand out as this is a proposal position, or you overlooked it. Sometimes I
Yeah.
need to let people know, hey, did that, you're a good match, but this isn't expected to be awarded until July of 2026.
Right.
So they appreciate that, so they're not kind of like holding their breath. I apply for 2 positions and I let them know they're both on the same contract, that we haven't been awarded yet. So that, I think people really appreciate that. That's the benefit of connecting with, representatives such as ourselves, that we can, so you can maybe look at some other possible positions, or we have access to be able to see the fully funded positions to kind of, immediately look to see if it's on that list or not. So
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I see CJ asked, I see Brent answered the other ones. Is it possible to turn an open job into a skill bridge? And unfortunately, it's not, CJ, because our jobs listed are for direct customer billing. So unfortunately, SkillBridge isn't allowed to bill to the customer. So all the roles outside of the SkillBridge one I have on there. So I do have a SkillBridge application on our careers website, but all the other roles are for full-time employment at this time. And the main reason is because they're billable, right? Those are customer facing, if you will. And SkillBridge isn't allowed to be a customer facing product, if you will. So if we bring you on as a SkillBridge intern, like you can't work on things that we give to the government and bill them for. So I hope I answered that question. Says there's a video thumbnail that pops up on the Paraton career search page. Is that you, Brad? Sometimes they rotate them. I don't really know, but we did do some videos, so I am part of some of the videos on there. Actually, I think I might have had the same shirt on I had in the videos.
We're all on those, Brian. We're all on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can. Some of them are different fields of our employees, and then some of them are focused on veterans. You can click veterans and read just their testimonials as well.
Yeah, I think we did those like what, a year and a half ago. That might even be longer now, wasn't it?
It probably was more longer than that. I don't know if they've added any recently, but I know they've added. Yeah, I know they've added some, and so that you can categorize them too. So if you can look at certain ones, and we try to keep them short to, I think, usually 1 minute, Brian.
Yeah, I think it was 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. Yeah, it was almost tough to do that short.
Yeah, we're not actors, and those are real people, as you can probably tell by watching the video. These aren't actors because they.
So Shania said, "How soon after filling out an application is it appropriate to reach out to one of us?" I said, "Reach out immediately."
Yes.
Because we're not like recruiters in that sense. So the three of us, we don't have particular roles we fill. We can send candidates or work on candidates for any role at the organization. So what we do is try to position you, if you will, as a candidate. So we say, hey, work with us. We might ask for some additional information, but what we do is we compile that information and we make a pitch for you, if you will, to the program to see if they're interested in you further in that sense. So there's no time frame for us. Actually, if you wait, that's bad. Because time is money.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the career search though too, because people are applying all day. As Cody said, is a position for for SkillBridge. So that's just where our headquarters is. So we do SkillBridges globally, realistically, mostly Europe and Pacific Theater, but we do have across the United States as well. That's just where our headquarters is. So. Well, no, that's okay. That's okay that you applied. I would say definitely, reach out to us, at the Military Connect or LinkedIn. I don't know if you guys can see the screen. I don't know what it looks like on the phone. I don't know you. But you can email us at militaryconnect@paraton.com. Shania, and one of us will get back to you, and we can certainly help advocate internally for the application. But we will ask more information though. Got some good questions. Did we miss anything, Brent?
No, we're caught up as of right now. Well, Dave just wrote, Brian, I sent you an email in reference to SkillBridge. Awesome.
Good to go.
Other than that, we are caught up at the moment.
Good stuff. I see you typing away over there, man.
I've been trying to answer them. By the time I answer them, you see them.
It's like that. You ever seen that meme where he's all like,
yeah.
Good stuff. Well, it doesn't look like we have much hidden on the board right now. So I guess what we could do, I still see we have quite a few viewers in there though, so we can give it another second or two, another couple of minutes, see if anybody has any further questions. Like I said, once again, anyone that's on can always reach out to us at militaryconnect@paraton.com. You can certainly go to our careers page. It's real easy, careers.paraton.com. You can find us on there.
I also added all three of our LinkedIn profiles at the very beginning of our chat.
Oh, gotcha. I say definitely reach out to us on LinkedIn. Be patient with us, though. Our LinkedIns tend to get a little bit feisty on us. So sometimes, Military Connect is honestly probably the easier one. My LinkedIn for me, I know for Brent and Jeff too, is sometimes it might take a week for me to get back to you on LinkedIn.
I'm about to, Brian. I'm 7 days behind now. I mean, I was up last night responding, trying to get to the 7-day mark. So yeah,
everybody I responded back, and I was like, I can't get anywhere.
Right, starts the process over. Yeah.
But is there priority hiring for disabled veterans? Well, that's a tough question, Celeste. It's not like the government though, so we're not like the U.S. government though, so we can't. We don't have like those hiring authorities. I can't remember what it's called now, but when you got I just brain dumped it. I haven't done the government stuff in a while though. It was that Schedule A hiring and stuff like that. So we don't have that kind of stuff, unfortunately. There's no priority hiring for any population around here. Really, it's the best qualified candidate is really what we look for. So there's no priority based on anything else other than qualification basis at that. So we don't have any standalone program. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we are the veterans folks here, so we are the veterans team. I mean, so that's where the priority comes in here is that we have full company support in the programs we do all the way up from the CEO, Steve Schover. But on our end, it would actually be, we're not allowed to prioritize a particular group. Tough question, Celeste. I think I answered it all right there. Let's see, any other questions? All right, folks. Well, like I said, we'll leave you. I guess we'll go ahead and throw in. I guess we got about 15 minutes left anyway, so we just go ahead, jump in, give our last thoughts. I guess I'll go ahead and drop one. So last thoughts for me is, hey, we understand. That's why we love what we do, though. We understand. In today's job market, it can be very difficult to punch through some of these candidate pools and get noticed and get interviews. And so forth. So if you feel like that's you, I would just like everyone to know that if you're struggling right now to find work or find the next spot, you're not the only one. It's rough out here right now as far as candidate pools, and there's just a lot of candidates in the market. I don't know why it's like that. That's just where we are right now. But just hang in there, work with folks like ourselves, and keep pushing at it. There's really the only way, and make adjustments and make changes, and it can certainly work out. Jeff, Brent, any last thoughts?
Brent, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it was a great class today. Very some of the best questions I think that we've seen in a hot minute. So definitely great participation from everybody. Hope everybody took something that they can use away from this. And like we stated earlier, if y'all need anything at all, definitely have a question about a requisition or a question about how to kind of massage that resume a little bit to help match it better or make it more appealing, I guess, to the hiring manager and the team. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, the one thing that I would leave you guys with is that you're gonna get a lot of advice and people telling you what you should be doing. So just look at the person that's presenting it and their background, how long they've been doing it. I always be careful of taking advice from someone that's not in talent acquisition, that's not in the day-to-day operations of this process. Because many times I've had to correct some really bad advice that some applicants are applying. So be selective. It's okay to ask questions, do research. I will leave it at that.
Good to go. Oh, well, thanks, Jeff. Well, I guess that does it for us today, folks. So on behalf of Paraton's Military and Veterans Program team, we thank you for joining us today. Everyone that's joined us today will receive invites to our future podcasts. That's what we do. That's how we market ourselves. So we appreciate everyone's time, everyone that stuck around, all the wonderful questions we had. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone. And until next time.